Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Awaken to Your Soul Path. I am your host, Barbara, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Casey Marriott. And we are going to be talking about the journey from burnout and how to turn that into business brilliance with the help of human design. And I've been very much looking forward to this because human design is one of the core elements of my business. And we don't talk about it enough, I think, and I haven't spoken about it on my channel before. So welcome, Casey. I'm very happy that you're here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we talked already a little bit in the beginning, and for people who do not know what human design is, it might be a good idea to explain that a little bit and maybe share how you came to it.
Yes. Human design is a system. And what they did is they found all these correlations between different modalities and they laid them on top of each other. So you have astrology, and on top of that is the Chinese I Ching system, on top of the Hindu chakra system, and a few other systems. And then they found that, basically we can go into great detail in about human behavior and how we experience burnout and how to create environments and systems that help us step into our gifted potential.
Hmm.
And so in the human design system, I'm the reflector type. So that means that all my energy centers are very open. And so, the reflectors make up 1% of the population. So we function very differently to 99% of the population.
Yes.
And so, obviously in my life, very early on, I was experiencing burnout and, incredible energetic problems. And so this led me, as well as energetic gifts, thinking I was going crazy just about how much I could absorb from the other. But we're
Hmm.
not taught that this is real.
Yes.
And so, this led me to, a discovery process. Also, I eventually ended up in deep burnout. So I,
Hmm.
kind of came across or was looking for tools on how to help my situation and how to feel better and like a normal person, like everybody else in my environment.
Yes, I love it. I recognize so much of it. And for the people who do not really know what a reflector is or how this works, so there are basically five energy types, or some say four in a combination, but I like to say five because you have the manifestor. That's where the Nike slogan fits perfectly to. Just do it. That's the
Exactly.
manifestor. They can download something, think about it, put it in the world. It's successful. That's only 8% of the world. And then you have the generators, which are like the diesel engines. It takes a while for them to get going, but once they are going, then they can go and go and go, and their energy supply seems limitless. But both of these groups can also end up in a burnout when the manifestor is trying to manifest too much, and when the generator is giving too much for too long of a period. And they can also end up in a burnout. Then you have the manifesting generator, of which I am one. And so I am a combination between the manifestor energy, but also the generator energy. And for me, that means that I'm mostly frustrated because I get downloads, but when I try to manifest them, it's not happening because I need to wait to be invited to manifest it, which causes the frustration and also burnout if you're not careful. And then reflectors, you said it already, 1% of the population. Open centers means that you do not have a defined energy in a specific center. So that means that you are open to everybody's energy on all of the fields. And I know this because my unconscious profile is that of a reflector. My conscious profile is of a manifester. My unconscious is of a reflector. So I recognize a lot of the things of a reflector too. And then the last is the projector. That's a very different type, and I cannot honestly say a lot about the projectors because I haven't delved very deep into how their energy works. But those are the five energy types, and I love that you discovered this about yourself because 1% of the population is very rare. I said manifestors are 8%. Um, Generators are 35%, manifesting generators are 35%. So a lot more common than the reflector. And as a sensitive person, you're already very different from the rest of the world. But as a sensitive reflector, I can see that that would cause a lot of challenges in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And thankfully, I kind of like was very open and fluid even as a child. And I'm the 4/6 profile type in human design, which means that I'm very open to experimenting and trial and error. So this led me to really break things down. So from an early age, I was already like, I can't work in the office. I can't work face to face with people. How do I turn this into? How do I make money? How am I going to live? And so I started an online business, 15 years ago, and instantly I could tell like, oh, there's a problem here, because
Hmm.
all of a sudden I got all my energy back from
Yeah.
working at home and just changing my environment and changing my system. So I naturally stepped into my path a lot earlier than many other people. So,
Hmm.
people who haven't kind of had that tenacity to break things and try new things are just reaching burnout now, 10,
Hmm.
15, 20 years later in their career, they're completely burnt out and they don't know why and they don't know how to fix it. And that's basically the entire inspiration for my business.
Well, yeah, but that's very true. But it's also very interesting because the four line is the people person. It's the networker. It's the one that loves being around people. So that then being by yourself was the answer is not a logical consequence of the first line people person that you are. So it's very interesting that this your discovery.
Well, yeah, but also, because there's so many things in our chart. So my environment, so you can also work out what your optimal environment is
Mhm.
caves. So
Yes,
caves
mine too.
people, yeah, like to, uh, you know, be in a place where they can't be uninterrupted, or like to be interrupted without knowing it, but they do quite well with working online. So I've created a self activation academy, which is a monthly membership, and that's my network.
Mm,
So I'm actually communicating with a number of people every single
exactly.
day, right?
You're
So that
creating
gives
your own
me,
tribe.
yeah, exactly. That gives me
Yeah.
that tribe energy while still being able to close myself off to interruptions and distractions. So
Yeah,
there's
that
just
is
so
so
many
important.
things. Yeah, so
Yes.
many things in our chart that we can optimize our environments and our systems, our workplaces,
Yes.
and it all interacts or sometimes contradicts each other. Like you say, like maybe that's not normal for a line four, but
No.
when you bring the synthesis of our chart together, each
Exactly.
person is unique.
Yes, and I love that you're saying that because that means we are never one thing. We are always a collection of things, and some things have a bigger influence than other things. So that there are also things like your incarnation cross that play a part in how things manifest for you, despite the line numbers that you're having. Of course, also the specific gates that are active for you and their energy and how they work will also greatly influence your mission here on Earth and what belongs to that, and also then how you set that into the world.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so many things, which is why I love using it as a tool. And, I just launched this purpose pivot mentorship because, it's a very fast way to take somebody who, maybe has even achieved success in their career, or maybe they have financial security, they're doing really well, but they're not happy and they're not fulfilled.
Hmm.
And usually we find it's because they're not even using their strongest gifts or the things that they're passionate about. And so human designs, like you say, you can look at those incarnation cross or the I Ching gates and really just get a very clear snapshot about where they might be missing out on their gifted potential and
Mm.
why they're feeling so unfulfilled in their day-to-day life or their careers, even though they might
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
success.
And so, what would be some of the things that you've learned about yourself that were challenges that you had to overcome and things that might have contributed to your burnout?
Yeah, so in my case, and a big part of what I teach is about like how to transmute our dysfunctional and burnout behaviors into the gifted potential that they're meant to be. And so I have a completely open head center and heart center in human design, which 70% and 65% respectively of the population have undefined head and heart. So this really relates to overthinking and fluctuating self-esteem or lots of self-doubt, right? And so when we look around, this is so evident everywhere else. that, I realized that my own journey to overcome these things would be so useful to other people. And so, I found how to balance that undefined head. And especially now with the rise of ADHD diagnosis or misdiagnosis, especially in women, a lot of people really are finding that they're stuck in this same cycle of the overthinking and fluctuating self-esteem burnout.
Hmm.
So, having now managed that, and, I've healed OCD, I manage ADHD, and so many other things. When I learnt how to balance those undefined and open centers, and it helped me, this is really where it became, such a path that I want to share with other people. So that's also where I get a lot of my burnout from. And it's not physical burnout, it's mental and emotional burnout. And this is what I teach people, that there are 3 types of burnout. We only really focus on the physical. So I, very young, created a work environment because I was physically burning out. But then later on, I was still, I launched a digital marketing business for 15 years, but I was still reaching burnout because I wasn't addressing the dysfunctional mental and emotional burnout behaviors. So
Hmm.
that has been my more recent path in the last couple of years. And now I'm kind of applying that and teaching that to help other women as well to build their businesses or pivot their purpose, or just, not being burnt out from those 3 types of energy that we use.
Yes, exactly. I recently wrote a whole article about spiritual burnout, but you also have mental burnout. So yes, there are many types of burnout, and we should also not forget bore out that can, yeah, manifest itself with the similar symptoms. But I was hoping that you might want to share a little bit more of the details of your journey, so that people who are still in the middle of it can relate a bit more, but also maybe you start to see a way out.
Okay. So certainly, like, I really look at the markers of how you're feeling, right? Like, everybody deserves to feel contentment, fulfillment, and have easy success. So, I think really when people are in this place of like every day struggling just to finish the day, right? Or, reaching burnout after 3 or 4 hours of work, or constantly being stuck in high intensity emotional states, like very easily frustrated or, disappointed or bitter about life, when they get stuck in these constant states and they start nitpicking on everybody and everything around them. Like, these tend to be the
That happened
symptoms.
to you then?
So I was burning out every day, basically. I would take, thankfully, I discovered the Spanish culture, and I was taking the siesta nap in the middle of the day, which was
Yes.
quite acceptable then. But
I think
yeah,
a lot of us can relate to that. I think a lot of energy sensitive, highly sensitive, empathic people would benefit from a siesta.
yeah. I mean, actually, it was great. I was like, I'm in the right culture because I lived there for 3 years. And so that was what was getting me through the day,
Mm,
like, so I was having, a 2 hour nap in the middle of the day, and it was acceptable in Spain. So what did it matter? But I was still just like, you know, hitting the wall at 2 p.m., having to take a nap, getting back up, trying to do a little bit more work. And then at the end of the day, hardly even being able to have a conversation with friends or partners or whatever, whoever was around, and just not feeling like a human being.
no.
And and this is what I noticed when I was 20. I mean, now I'm 40, but in my 20s, that I couldn't even go out as a
Mm,
22-year-old. I was like, something is really wrong here. Like,
yeah.
I have zero energy even to go and see my friends, even to go to a bar, even to go to a restaurant. I was like, what's wrong with me?
Hmm. Yeah, and this directly ties into your energy type of being the reflector. They do your energy and how you spend your energy during the day works completely different from a manifester or even a generator. So those things are very important to learn about yourself. So how did your self-discovery journey start then? What triggered this learning all these things about yourself?
So, yeah, on one hand, I started fixing things. And, when we have unstable foundations, you just pull out one little stick and the entire thing breaks down. And so that's what happened, right? Like, I started making big changes in my life, and then my entire life imploded, and then I had a breakdown. And so I was in this very deep breakdown and burnout stage and not really understanding why. And it was because, I was like just overloading my nervous system and my, just my system in general, with
Mm.
like also going deeper into that, like each type makes decisions in different ways. And I'm meant to make very long decisions. And during this time, I was forced to make all these really fast decisions, and it put a lot of stress, and I just lost it. But looking back, that was probably going to happen anyway. Looking at the burnout behaviors that I was still kind of having daily, it's like I say, you just change one thing, but then I look back and I'm like, wow, how did I survive for those 15 years? Like, this was probably going to happen anyway. So in this state of just everything breaking apart, and just trying to get back up and trying to find a way to get unstuck and out of burnout. And when you're in burnout, I mean, people would call it equivalent to a spiritual awakening, but when you're in burnout, you don't really have desire to go back to the situation that just broke you.
Yeah, no.
So, so all of a sudden, even my career, I was like, it's just not working. Like I have to face the facts that I'm really not that passionate about it. I'm still burning out quite regularly. I can't build bigger. I was also at the stage of expanding, and I had zero desire to expand in that business. And I was like, it's all wrong. And so
Hmm.
that's when I started, looking for other ideas and how to get out of it, and just so confused about like, which direction do I take? Okay, great. I agree. I need to change my life, but where do I go? What's step one? And we get really lost in this stage of uncertainty.
Hmm.
You don't know how to move forward. So I just
Yes.
got to that place of like, okay, universe, I'm so lost. Tell me which
Mm.
way to go. And I remember I did a meditation, which I was just discovering meditation for the first time. And I listed out my 3 things that I wanted to manifest, all related to my old business. And in the meditation, it was like, no, you need to go and be a psychic healer, which I had already been initiated several years before. So I already knew this. I was like, no, I don't want to help people. And that's a sign of the burnout, right? Like I knew deep down I loved helping people, and everyone came to me for help because I see very clearly into the energy, but I was avoiding it because of the burnout. And
Hmm.
so I got that message, and it was like, no, it's time. You have to go, you have to step into your gifted potential.
Yeah.
And that started the whole process of unraveling the true gifts that were there, and the true gifts that I was ignoring, or that were
Hmm.
buried under burnout behaviors. Burnout blocks everything. It blocks our clarity. It blocks
Yes.
our decision making. It blocks our gifts.
Yes, I'm very happy that you're sharing this because it's very similar to my story. So, in this essence, our energy type is not that important in how it manifests. Because I also remember thinking, I'm so done with this. I cannot do this anymore. And but then also, but what then? If not this, then what then? And that was a big, big question, right? And it takes a lot of self-discovery, journeying into the self, getting to know yourself before you're finally able to answer what that is. And for me, it started with energy healing and then going into acupuncture. And then later I thought, well, it's great that I can do something with energy and with the body, but I also want to work with the mind and started expanding from that. So, yes, exactly. And a lot of people tell me, yeah, but people are saying that I'm depressed. And they give lots of burnout people antidepressants because they are diagnosed as depressed. And for me, being burned out is a total lack of energy. So, of course, I don't want to get up. Of course, I don't want to do something. Of course, I don't want to talk to someone. And it makes me have depressing thoughts. But I'm not depressed in sense of clinically depressed. I'm just completely without energy.
Yeah, it's so true. And this is really what, sparked my interest is it's because we're misdiagnosing the symptoms.
Yes.
Exactly like you say, depression or anxiety, how often anxiety gets misdiagnosed. Even with the ADHD, like all that overthinking and all of this stuff, yeah, they would easily misdiagnose all of these things as kind of, well, you're just depressed and anxious and unhappy. And it's of course that's a part of it, but it's like you say, it's that the burnout heightens these symptoms. And I really say when I teach people that the burnout heightens the dysfunctional behaviors of the chakra centers, right? So wherever you have undefined or open chakra centers, this tends to be where the dysfunctions come up the most. So the way of fixing it is not by rest, it's by transmuting the behavior or rewiring the behavior into what it's meant to be. So it's like you say, if you get stuck just kind of unhappy all the time, it might just be that you're lacking passion as a generator or a manifesting generator. You're lacking passion. That's the burnout. It's an emotional burnout. It's not a physical burnout. And so it's not depression. And, part of really what I'm dedicated to working is helping people with mental health illness, I suppose. I call it dysfunctional behavior because it can be anything, but ultimately to reduce the misdiagnosis and over prescription of medication
Hmm.
in favor of self-management tools and techniques.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, when I talk about the dysfunctional and burnout behavior into your gifted potential, it's a lot about self-management and,
Yes, of course.
dealing with those symptoms.
Exactly. So I work with a lot of highly sensitive people, and the way into a burnout for a highly sensitive person is completely different from the other 80% of the world. And also the way out of the burnout for the highly sensitive person is completely different. But a lot of highly sensitive people are also misdiagnosed as being autistic or having borderline or having ADD or ADHD. While they don't have that, they are just having an overactive nervous system and trouble regulating their personality trait in a way that feels calm and natural instead of anxious and overwhelmed. And so I always say to people, it starts with getting to know yourself really well. I call it getting to know your user manual. What makes you tick? What gives you energy? What drains your energy? How do you work? Human design for me, but also the gene keys are a very big part in that because they tell you who you are at your core, how you are designed, how you are wired, and how you function best. And also how to recognize when you're not functioning at your best and what the symptoms could be of that. So your shadow patterning, but also your wounding, your core wounding, your DNA wounding, your mother wounding, all of it is being shown by these two systems. And uh, knowledge is power. The better you know yourself, the better you are familiar with your user manual and how life works for you, the easier it becomes for you to operate in this world because we are shifting. But for a long, long time, this world wasn't made for people with open centers or people who are very sensitive because everything was very logical with planners and goals and trackers and very male dominated energy, which also requires you to make a decision within the time that our meeting lasts. Lots of sales trainings teach people that if they want to close a call, they need to keep a person on the line until they've said yes. But there are only manifestors who can say yes within the call, and all the other energy types need so some have a lunar cycle, they need 28 days exactly to come to a conclusion. Others need to ride the emotional wave, which is me, for however long that lasts until calm comes back, and then you can make a decision. So these pressure things that our people are putting on you, and not just in sales calls but also in your job, in everyday life, where you need to make a split decision or where you're forced to handle this crisis or that crisis, and then being very open, feeling everything, sucking up everything, having a great sense of responsibility, and always wanting to do your best and be there for the people who matter to you. The combination of all of these things can very easily land you in a burnout if you do not know how to regulate yourself and if you don't know yourself well enough to recognize the signs and have good strategies for handling all of these things.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, isn't it? It's like every time that we're forced or that we force something in our body, right? Because of like you say, someone's forcing you to make a decision, or the structure of your work environment says that you must be at the office at these hours. And so often, every single day, everybody is forcing themselves against their nature in some way.
Yes.
And each one of these forcements is creating, or it's like adding a little bit to your burnout, basically. Each time
Yes.
that you force yourself, each time you go against what feels good in your body, because you have to, this is what really builds up into that burnout. And, I
Yes.
think it's so interesting that now, like I think in like around 2019 or 2020, WHO declared burnout as an actual illness that needs to be treated, and that's rising in the workplace,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's really what's happening. Everybody now, we're seeing the results of living this way now with high workloads, and just lots of structures, lots of people having to force themselves now for like 15-20 years. This wasn't the same back in the 80s, so now we've had a good chunk of time living this lifestyle, and now burnout is considered a rising workplace issue.
For sure. I think it was a staggering 75 to 80% of people that are experiencing burnout or burnout symptoms. So that is shocking. It's beyond shocking. And I also contributed for a large fact to something that I call the rules, the bullshit rules of life, the way things are supposed to be done. And when I was still working for a boss, I had a boss who was convinced that when you worked at home, you didn't do anything because I
Mm.
wasn't there to keep a watch eye on you.
Yeah.
And that's not true. And that's one of the positive things of COVID. Everybody had to work at home and the whole economy didn't collapse. So yes, people were able to work at home. And things are changing, but we learn from our parents and from our grandparents and from our teachers and from people that we see as a role model behavior that we think is socially acceptable. And it's also being taught in schools. So we think we need to be a certain person and we need to look a certain part and we need to act a certain part and we need to do certain things because that is what is expected, or that is what's normal, or that is what everybody else is doing. But there are only a few people who stop to think, but is this true for me? Is this my truth? Does this work for me? And of course, there's a large fear culture going on. And because we fear that if I say to my boss, well, boss, I understand that you come from an archaic dynasty where this was the norm, but I know that I work a lot better when I work from home because I'm not constantly interrupted. I'm not bothered by everybody's energy. I can really focus on what I'm doing. And I've also done 5 things in my own house at the same time.
Yeah.
We feel that we cannot say that to our boss because we are afraid of losing our job, for instance.
Yeah, and I think this is what's like so interesting about where we are right now is that, we now have the digital tools to say no and create your own business, or, there's lots of ways now that people can disrupt the system.
Yes.
And, in human design, they predict that by 2027, the systems will fail. And in some kind of look at it as the apocalypse that's coming. But what I see it very much as is, what started in COVID. COVID was this one big impact that made everybody realize that there were different ways of operating. Now, not everyone did well working at home, and they were so desperate to go to the office, but some people realized that they performed better, right? So it began this differentiation. It began people questioning differentiation and like, well,
Yes.
what do I want and what do I need? And we have the digital tools now available to us to empower basically anyone who wants to go and empower their own business or their own purpose. And so I really am seeing, and this is why I focus really on helping people start online businesses, but I'm really seeing that this is going to be the rise of
Yes.
the breaking of the systems. And we're going
I
to
agree.
move money from, conglomerates and big commercial, people who are holding on to all the money. This is going to start filtering down, and those are the systems that are going to break. So,
Yes.
I think it's really a great time and a optimal time for people who are really in burnout or not functioning to start questioning what is it that they need, and are they prepared to build it, it's like
Yes.
you say though, it's like not everyone is also designed to do this. Some people are really designed to work in the office and to work the 9 to 5 and to work that structured masculine way of being,
Yes.
right? But a lot of people also are more intuitive and, work better with feminine or, non-scheduled flow and non-scheduled days and all working alone,
Yes.
not being in a team. So, this is all really changing. And so it's more about, like you say, understanding who you are and not just following any dream because someone says it's a dream. So, sometimes I'm also like, don't start a business if it's not for you.
Well, yeah,
It's not,
exactly. I agree with you. Yeah, so 90% of the people that I work with end up having their own business, but then a business that really suits who they are. And that's what I love about human design, but also the Gene Keys. They also tell you what type of business suits you best and how to market your business and who your audience is and how to talk to them. And so these are also things that I teach people that come from these systems. So it's been the thing that moved the needle the most for me, both personally as well as professionally. But we are in very exciting times because indeed the structures as we've known them so far are failing and falling, and they need to, because everything is changing, but the world wasn't changing with the changes in nature. And this is a time of opportunities, and 90% become entrepreneurs, but the other 10% still want to work for a boss. But then you need to still have a job that still fits who you are, not something that forces you to be someone you're not, well, and leading you to burnout, but finding a job, working for a boss, being your best within that structure is also possible. And that is, I think, one of the most beautiful shifts that we are making, that it's no longer what we think we need to be, but it's becoming more and more about who we truly are, how we are designed to work, how we are designed to operate. It's more and more about what we came here to do on this planet, what our mission is, or vision, our passion, whatever word you want to give it, and then who we are meant to be helping and in what specific way, because that is dependent on your unique talents and gifts. But you first need to discover them before you can either have a job or a business that uses those.
yeah, and I love that. And I love what you're saying as well, because it's so true. It's like all the different types fit together to create the optimal company or society or community. So, I
Yes.
mean, I would even love to bring more human design into the workplace practices because, even these small businesses that are building now might one day become big businesses and they're going to have to go through the same thing. It's how to allocate people not according to the job that you have, but according to the job that they will do best.
Yes.
And so, really creating roles around the people rather than trying to force the people into the roles.
Exactly. Yeah. Not trying to put a square peg in a round hole, but oh, you're a square peg. Oh, then we will make a square hole for you. You're a round
Yeah.
peg. Perfect. And you'll fit in here. You're a triangle. Also great. We have that hole here. Something like that, right? Where you are celebrated in your uniqueness, where you are seen in your uniqueness, and where you are valued in your uniqueness. Because so many people feel that they are not okay, or that there is something wrong with them, that they are broken, or that they cannot function in this society. And that is very true in their reality, but it doesn't have to be that way if there are some changes both in your life, in your perspective, as well as in employers. I think employers can also play a really big part in it if they start to see their staff, their personnel, their employees as their most valuable commodity.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of the systems that are going to break. People are no longer accepting just being, another faceless person making millions for the company. People want fulfillment and they want to feel purpose, and they're starting to quit, and starting to make the companies become accountable for the fact that, everyone is so unhappy or unfulfilled, and that we need to change these systems. We've had time to see that it's not working,
Yes.
and like people are unhappy, and it's like you say, they think that they're broken or disadvantaged or debilitated because, you know, they're a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. And, you know, that's exactly, it's one of my taglines. It's like, you're dysfunctional, not broken or debilitated. It's just that you are stuck in the wrong systems and environments that are causing you to dysfunction. It doesn't mean you're broken. And actually, just by changing a few little things in their environment and their systems, they thrive. And I always use the analogy of a plant. You know, when a plant starts to wilt, we don't throw away the plant. We don't be like, well, the plant is broken
Well,
now.
some people do.
Oh, poor plant. But, you know, it's like we do everything in our power to fix the water, the sun, and the soil. And then instantly that same plant can go from wilting to blossoming. And so humans are the same, right? If a human is wilting, the human is not broken. We just need to put them in a different place and environment and systems. And suddenly the same human is functional and gifted and bringing in success. And so it's really important, I think, for everybody.
For sure. So, what would be the one thing that you would advise people, or one exercise or tip or something that you can give people that they can already start practicing themselves as sort of their first step on this road?
You know, it's like you said before, everything is about self-awareness. You know, there's like, you just have to be very aware first of what's happening. And I think that's where everyone's just getting stuck. So the first two exercises that I normally do with people is, you know, I talk about burnout and the 3 types of burnout. And I get them to write down, like, every time you're doing something that you think is causing physical burnout, have a look about what's coming up for you in that moment. So I often say, like, when people are like, oh, my job is burning me out, when we look at what's happening during the day, we see that actually it's because they hate their job and they're expending all this emotional energy, like, I hate my job, and they're overthinking and, coming up with all these scenarios in their mind. So it's not the physical job that's burning them out. It's all the emotional and mental energy. And so I often take them through processes of this, like, every time you're in a situation that you think is burning you out, have a look about what's really burning you out. And this is usually when we can start to see if it is a systematic, an environmental, or a traumatic behavior that's causing the burnout. So it's just about, you can't really tackle burnout as a big, lump problem. It's full of tiny little problems and tiny little fixes. So we have to break open the topic of burnout and start coming down with all the little mini causes and symptoms and what's actually happening. And then from there, I normally take them to start writing down what are the dysfunctional behaviors and narratives that are coming up, right? So maybe you hate your job and you want to leave your job, but in your mind, actually, the dysfunctional narrative is talking about how you are not feeling seen and appreciated. So it's not the job. It's actually that you're not feeling valued. So there's just so many ways that we break out. So when we see that, then the treatment is very different, right? So now we've got to be like, okay, where is this dysfunction coming of not being seen or feeling unseen and unheard? And that's when we can then go to the deeper problem. And that's usually a traumatic behavior. So then we can trace them back to the very first time they felt unseen and unheard, right? And then we can start to unravel the knots that are leading to the current dysfunction to get them out of burnout, right? So that's usually the kind of process that I take them through. So step 1 is just getting really clear on what's happening in your emotional, your mental, and your physical states that are causing burnout or dysfunctional symptoms.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have been loving our talk, Casey. It's been really wonderful. I can imagine that you, watcher, listener, viewer out there, are also really loving this talk. So if you are, I would love it if you could subscribe to the channel, maybe share the episode with someone you think would also benefit from hearing it, and maybe sharing your number 1 insight in the comments. That would be amazing. And I could also imagine that they want to know, Casey, where they can find you, how they can contact you. So where can people find you? How can they contact you best?
So you can find me on Facebook with coaching.with.casey. And I also have my website, selfactivationacademy.com. And that's where you can find my monthly membership, and also where I do my mentorships to help activate people's potential.
I love it. I will make sure that the links that Casey mentioned are included in the show notes, probably below this video, but somewhere around, depending on where you're catching this. Of course, you can also book a call with me. The link to do so will also be included in the description. But for today, I want to thank you, of course, listener, watcher, for being here, for your support for this channel, but mostly you, Casey, for being here and talking about everything that you've experienced and human design, and especially how you are fulfilling your mission in helping the people in the world. I loved
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Well, there you have it. This is how you can use human design to turn your burnout into your business success. If you want to know more or if you want to reach out, use the links in the comments. And I look forward to inspiring you with another new guest in next week's show. Thank you for today and have an amazing rest of your day.